Is it good for unanswered prayers to happen? Let me tell you of a story that happened to me this morning. So I've mentioned it briefly, but I'll explain. I work at Amazon. So I work in the warehouse. I work in a sort center. So what that means is that we get boxes that are items that are already fully boxed. They come into our facility from other facilities and then unorganized to where they need to be. And then it goes through our building and it gets organized into different zip codes that they go to different cities so they get to your house. So this morning, one of the things I was doing is I was unloading one of the trailers, and there's one building that always tends to send us containers that aren't wrapped very well or boxes that are open. So basically the two ways that, there are three ways that we receive the containers into our building. One is go-karts or carts, and another is shuttles, which is basically a 6-foot cardboard box that we put other boxes inside that it gets shuttled to other places, which is why it's called that. And then pallets, which imagine boxes that are wrapped in or organized in a certain way on a pallet, and big, huge saran wrap is put around it to keep it steady to go to the next building. Well, this container was not very well wrapped at all. There was construction going on in both sides of the warehouse, so there was a very little amount of space. Well, obviously enough for me to unload, but there wasn't anybody around me. Usually, if we have a badly wrapped pallet, we ask somebody else next to us to hold it up while we pull it out with a pallet jack. But there was nobody around. So I prayed that God would have angels hold it up for me so that I could pull it out and wouldn't have to have the mess and clean it up. But when I pulled it out, He didn't answer that prayer. What I found out, in the middle of the pallet, so not on top, not on bottom, but in the middle of the pallet, probably half the pallet had been spilled on with something. Still don't know what. So I work in problem solve as well for boxes that get spilled on or labels that are crinkled or things like that. And so I took out all of the boxes and put them in what we call laundry bins to take over to small sort, and it was about half of the pallet. But if it hadn't fallen over, I wouldn't have seen these boxes. I wouldn't have seen that there were so many leaked on packages. And I didn't find out where the source of the leak was, which box was it that leaked onto the other boxes. So that could have easily gotten onto the conveyor belt and gone throughout the building, and then we might have had some of the leadership have to stop the conveyor belt and clean it off. But because I found that, it avoided a lot of mess and devastation, possibly for other shifts or other sorts, as we call them. So I was thinking about this. When it comes to negative situations, I always like to try and put a positive spin on it. And I was thinking about this. Where in your life have you had a prayer that you'd offered up to God once, twice, maybe many times that hasn't been answered? Maybe the reason it wasn't answered is because there's stuff on the inside of your life or other people's lives, house, whatever you're praying for, that you don't see. Just like the leaked on packages were inside this pallet, maybe God doesn't answer your prayers because there's something you don't see. a spill, a leak, or something that would be devastating would be a bad thing about you getting that prayer answered. So that's just a quick story that maybe can apply to your life to give you more peace and insight about prayers that have not been answered in your lives. Maybe it's for your good. Maybe God hasn't answered those prayers because he has a greater mission for you or something better in your life that you can't see because it's the inside. Comment below if you've had anything like that was a good thing that God didn't answer your prayers. Or comment anything down below that you're thinking about as I'm telling this story, that maybe we all can be edified together as Christians. God bless you. You are enough to handle what you need to handle today.